About a decade or so was when I was in the final process of retiring from Sanford Bernstein and Company and taking on the full-time responsibility for the Tikva Fund. I knew that to be successful with Tikva, we needed to come up with a series of big ideas. But ideas aren't enough. You need to find leaders. You need to find people that have the capacity to really lead others and to work every day for that purpose. And that isn't an easy job, surprisingly. Over the course of about a year and a half or so, I interviewed about 20 people at that time. After a while, I started to think there was something wrong with me. My wife even agreed. But then in 2006, I met Eric Cohen, who was only 29 at that time, approximately half my age. But he had an old head on those wide young shoulders. An alumnus of Williams College, Fulbright scholar, he cared deeply about Tikva's fundamental mission is to help the Jews, whether it's in the US and Israel. This is even before conservatism was actually linked together in this way. But it was another quality that particularly attracted me to Eric. And even at his young age, he had already been recognized as being a public intellectual. But he had also shown something that's rare, and that was entrepreneurial skills. The ability to make things happen, not just come up with the idea, but then come up with the strategy, the implementation, the tactics, to move things forward. And in my experience, that is very rare quality, especially for intellectuals. And I sensed he would bring to the task of managing Tikva many ideas of what Tikva's future should and would look like. And even after, so to say, our first date, I was sure he was the one. And if you needed more of a sense of that, of what has been accomplished or what he's capable of, earlier this year, he and the inimitable Elena Maisel, I don't know where she is, somewhere here, but you should all get to know her. She's a terrific woman. Co-authored a 12,000-word essay in Commentary magazine called A Manifesto, Jews and Conservatism, that does give much perspective of actually why we're here today. I should also thank John Podhoretz, Commentary's editor, who I'm not sure is here today, for his support of this idea, for providing the enormous amount of space necessary in that magazine, in that prestigious magazine, to lay out this entire argument. And I think was done really well. So with that, thank you, and let's give a nice round of applause to Eric Cohen.
Well, American Jews and American conservatives have had some remarkable leaders over the past few decades, but very few as consequential as Roger Hertog. He's a man of great vision, great generosity, and great humanity. I thank him for his moving introduction, and we should all really thank him for inspiring this important gathering. In 1962, the Jewish political philosopher Leo Strauss delivered a memorable lecture at the Hillel House in Chicago entitled, "Why We Remain Jews." His main concern was not that modern Jews would quietly assimilate out of existence through ignorance or disinterest. After all, this was 50 years before the Pew Report's startling data on the erosion of Jewish identity. His real fear was that Jews would always be labeled by others as Jews, no matter what they did and no matter how hard they tried to fit in. And his question was, would those of us with stars of David emblazoned on our souls or sewn forcibly on our shirts understand why being Jewish was noble, dignified, and heroic? Our enemies, ancient and modern, understood that we are not from the gutter. Our friends, from John Adams to George Eliot, understood the significance of Jewish exceptionalism in defining the civilizational story of mankind. But did modern Jews themselves have the moral and metaphysical self-confidence to defend the majestic inheritance of the Jewish people and to declare, as Jews, we cannot fail? Those of us gathered together at this conference are here because we believe that preserving the Jewish people, the Jewish state, and the Jewish way of life is indeed a sacred responsibility, and that we cannot fail. We may come from different parts of the Jewish world, secular and religious, Reform and Haredi, Hasidic and modern Orthodox, American and Israeli. We even have a few Canadians. But I believe all of us have clear answers to Strauss's question, why remain Jews? We remain Jews because we believe that the Jewish idea of human life is true, that men and women are the highest beings in the created universe, that we are capable of choosing good over evil, that we can transmit these moral truths from one generation to the next, and that the drama of human life matters. We believe as Jews that history is a story with a purpose, and we believe as Jews that we are summoned to play a special part. We remain Jews because we honor the heroic survival of our ancestors against all rational odds. As Strauss himself put it, our past, our heritage, our origin is not a misfortune, but suffering indeed, heroic suffering, suffering stemming from the heroic act of self-dedication of a whole nation to something which it regarded as infinitely higher than itself, in fact, which it regarded as the infinitely highest. When so many in history have tried to destroy us or demand that we abandon who we are as the price of their toleration, we rightly revolt at the prospect of turning our backs on our past and nullifying the hard-won miracle of Jewish survival. We remain Jews because we believe in the cultural greatness of Jewish civilization. Will the depths of human longing ever find better expression than David's Psalms? Will the complicated relationship between men and women ever find a deeper account than Adam and Eve? Will the passionate yearning for a child ever find a truer voice than Hannah's prayer? Will the challenges of a political founding ever find a better exemplar than Joshua? And who are we, the living heirs to this Hebraic legacy, to shrink from carrying the weight of Jewish wisdom forward in time? Finally, we remain Jews because we recognize that the refounding of the Jewish state in 1948 is one of the greatest political achievements in human history. Men and women of steel built Israel. Men and women of spirit kept the dream alive. And now we live in the age of a resurrected Jerusalem, and we know that we must play our part in preserving it. Mark Twain marveled at the mystery of the Jews long before the Holocaust and long before the birth of modern Israel, but his words still ring true. If the statistics are right, he wrote, the Jews constitute but 0.25% of the human race, yet the Jew's importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. The Egyptians, the Babylonians, and the Persians rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greeks and Romans followed and made a vast noise, and they were gone. Other people have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now and have vanished. The Jew saw them all, survived them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert but aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jews. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? Well, I'm sorry to report that this conference will not uncover once and for all the secret of Jewish immortality. For that, we would have had to charge a much higher price for your tickets. But my hope is that we can take on one very important challenge. Which political vision best reflects Jewish values? Which political ideas and public policies will best ensure Jewish success in the modern world? And how can the Jews and the Jewish tradition contribute to the renewal of modern civilization in America and throughout the West? We have serious reasons why we remain Jews. We need an equally serious political strategy for how we will remain Jews. The first challenge is simply understanding the modern Jewish condition as it really is and recognizing what is at stake. Compared with much of Jewish history, it is indeed a blessed time to be a Jew. In Israel, nearly half of the Jewish people now live in the promised land of our ancestors, as sovereign rulers of our own nation, as speakers of our own language, as shapers of our own covenantal destiny. In America, Jews have the freedom to flourish as Jews, to build schools and communities, to pray and to learn, and to pursue the good life without discrimination or disadvantage. American Jews possess the dignity of liberty, sitting in safety under our own vine and fig tree, just as George Washington imagined. And yet the Jews today face grave and perhaps novel threats. The threat of destruction, the threat of assimilation, the threat of demoralization. In the Middle East, we confront Iranian expansionism and headlong nuclearization, hardened Palestinian rejectionism and rampaging terror. In Europe, we confront the rise of a new and violent anti-Semitism. In America and throughout the democratic West, we confront a galloping erosion of Jewish identity and Jewish commitment, the spread of an increasingly secular culture hostile to traditional communities of faith, and elite universities and media suffused with anti-Zionist and anti-Jewish attitudes. Surely no one would choose the Paris of 1894 or the Kishinev of 1903 or the Warsaw of 1941 over the blessings of modern Israel and modern America. Yet today's Jewish problems are indeed very real. We must face them wisely and courageously, or our generation will have failed. In our view, the conservative way of thinking has much to contribute to the cause of Jewish preservation. Modern conservatives, from Edmund Burke to Irving Kristol, from Alexis de Tocqueville to Norman Podhoretz, grappled with some of the very kinds of challenges the Jewish people now confront. The importance of preserving tradition in an untraditional age. The significance of national identity in a cosmopolitan world. The necessity of military power in the face of ideological enemies. The importance of economic liberty in ensuring the vitality of a modern nation state. On these great questions, conservatives have much to teach the Jews if we are willing to listen. But the Jews and the Jewish tradition also have much to contribute to the renewal of modern conservatism. For at the deepest level, the conservative worldview is rooted in Jewish ideas about the sanctity of human life, about the centrality of the family, about the possibility of transcendence. And it is no accident that many conservatives, especially Christian conservatives, care so deeply today about the Jewish people. For as go the Jews, so goes the West. Should Israel be mortally attacked? Should radical secularism or radical Islam triumph? Should the partnership of traditional religion and democratic capitalism come to ruin, then the pillars of Western and Jewish civilization alike will have eroded or even crumbled. We are here today at this inaugural conference on Jews and conservatism because we believe that these two ways of thinking, the Jewish way and the conservative way, and these two communities, the Jewish people and the conservative movement, will fail or flourish together. We are also here because we believe that politics matters. As conservatives, we know that politics should never seek to replace the deeper things in life, the things that really count, the real reasons to pray, strive, love, and live. But as Charles Krauthammer once put it, if we don't get politics right, everything else is imperiled. In moments of Jewish trial in the past, great political leaders and new political movements have sometimes emerged. The birth of modern Zionism is obviously the most remarkable example. Now it is our turn, as proud Jews with a national purpose, and as thoughtful conservatives who understand the hard-won lessons of political history, to step forward, Now it is our turn to try to lead the Jewish people in the political arena, to explain why Jewish values point toward conservative policies, and to show how conservative policies generally serve Jewish interests. Where progressives put their faith in government to solve the problems of human life, we need to make the case for Jewish liberty and Jewish community. Where dreamers put their faith in the illusion of perpetual peace, we need to make the case for Jewish sovereignty and strength. Where cosmopolitans embrace the spirit of multiculturalism, we should celebrate Jewish excellence and proudly stand up for the Jewish people in the civilizational arena. Where liberationists seek to move beyond old-fashioned Judaism, we should seek to recover and preserve the enduring truths of the Hebrew Bible. Many critics of Jewish conservatism will accuse us of believing that Judaism equals conservatism, that the Torah is really Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations in ancient Hebrew, that at Sinai God created the Republican Party, and that Maimonides advocates cutting marginal tax rates. Well, this is all nonsense. We have a more sophisticated argument to make, one that deepens the debt of modern conservatism to the Jewish tradition and that applies the wisdom of modern conservatism to contemporary Jewish problems. Others might accuse Jewish conservatives of just being another identity group, angling for power and payoffs, to which we say our Jewish identity is not a source of grievance, but a source of pride. And the ideas we advance may have Jewish origins or serve Jewish interests, but they have universal significance and they serve more than Jewish interests. Religious liberty, school choice, Israeli sovereignty, the culture of the family. These are the ideas we seek to advance, and they matter for Jews, Christians, and all Americans who value the past and believe in the future. So what do we stand for? At the heart of Jewish conservatism, I believe, are three distinctive understandings of human liberty. Permit me to explore each of them briefly in turn. The first concept of Jewish liberty is the idea that communities of faith and tradition should have the freedom and the responsibility to direct their own lives with a government that is properly limited in its reach. Modern Jews have a long history of being lured by the idea of an all-powerful state, and looking backward, this seduction was understandable. Many Jews were economically impoverished in the Old World, and they sought a revolutionary answer to the injustices of the ghetto. And many Jews believed in the idea of redemption, the yearning to heal a broken world, and believed that some version of socialism might succeed where divine protection had seemed to fail. But history has now taught us some sobering lessons about the problem of ceding too much hope and too much power to the Redeemer state, even for idealistic reasons. The conservative alternative to statism is instead the reinvigoration of community. The web of attachments between fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, grandparents and grandchildren, rabbis and congregants, teachers and students, that together give life its shape and its purpose. Political freedom does not ensure that community life will flourish, but the loss of political freedom ensures that it won't. And the first freedom that Jews and all citizens need to protect and preserve is the freedom of religion. As Jews and as conservatives, we need to fight against any effort to shrink or prohibit the scope of Jewish liberty. We need to defend the communal autonomy of our synagogues, our schools, and our ritual lives. And we need to lend the special moral authority of the Jewish people, who have paid a heavy price in history when the state becomes the all-powerful arbiter of religious practice, to help preserve and restore our sacred American inheritance, the idea of religious liberty for all. Yet defending Jewish communal life against potential encroachments is not enough. We also need to advance the positive idea that true liberty requires the freedom to educate the rising generation in schools that transmit our communal norms and values. In a political system that taxes every family to pay for public education, we need to liberate our tax dollars to allow Jewish parents to choose the kind of schools they believe are best for their children, including Jewish day schools. If the public school monopoly persists, the communities that bring Jewish liberty to life will slowly get suffocated. And without the reinvigoration of Jewish schools, the pursuit of Jewish excellence, which begins in modest classrooms where the future Soloveitchiks and Agnons and Jabotinskys learn the alphabet of Jewish civilization, will be sacrificed. The second concept of Jewish freedom is the idea that the Jewish state should remain sovereign, never ceding its national liberty to tyrants, emperors, or overseers from the UN. The political history of the Jews truly begins with the liberation of the Israelite people from Egypt, a liberation by divine force of arms. Against the idea of Egyptian empire, which turned the Jews into servants of the pyramid builders' worldly ambitions, the Jewish people embodied a different political ideal of free peoples, self-governing, defined by their own distinctive founding and covenantal purpose, living in a defined and defensible land they can call their own. In the modern world, the Jewish state remains a rebuke to the false promise of empire. And while Jews should never overstate our own geopolitical importance in a world of great powers, Israel is a bellwether for whether free nations will prevail against the forces of chaos, barbarism, and the tyranny of utopian illusions. In our age, the cause of Israel and the cause of freedom are truly inseparable. As American Jews, we are a special link between two chosen nations that need one another. The soul of America was long ago shaped by the spirit of the Hebrews, and the fate of the Israelites now depends greatly on American friendship and leadership. Modern Israel has much to learn from the political success of America, including how to bring together the spirit of liberty and the spirit of tradition. But America also has much to gain from modern Israel's moral example, especially its courage, vigilance, and will to survive in a dangerous world. Israel is a permanent reminder that political freedom is never free, and American Jews in particular should never forget the debt we owe to our Israeli brethren who defend the eternal flag of David. Limited government and national sovereignty are indeed very important. Yet it is the third Jewish idea of liberty that is perhaps the most fundamental: the freedom to perfect our human nature, guided by the enduring wisdom of the Jewish tradition. In the modern age, some people have come to believe that liberty means the right to live without criticism or commandment, that freedom means every man and every woman is the autonomous God of the self. But Jews can never accept this impoverished idea of the human person, as if human beings simply invent who we are, as if we have no inherited obligations from the past and no binding duties to the future. The road out of Egypt did not end with the nihilistic carnival of the golden calf. Liberated from Egypt, the Israelite nation was summoned to a higher law that would govern its moral life. Liberated from Egypt, the Israelite nation still needed the moral instruction necessary to ensure that it did not become enslaved to its own baser desires. The Jewish idea of liberty is thus an alternative to the abyss, the false notion that we possess total freedom because we are merely dust in the void, telling jokes until we die. As Jews, we celebrate limited government, but not in the name of moral anarchy or self-dehumanization. And we laugh a Jewish laugh because we know that life is good, that life has meaning, that life is a gift to be savored. Our second president, John Adams, once insisted that the Hebrews have done more to civilize men than any other nation. If I was an atheist and believed in blind eternal fate, he said, I should still believe that fate had ordained the Jews to be the most essential instrument for civilizing the nations. As we look around today at a contemporary culture in turmoil, perhaps the code of Moses can help civilize us once again. Perhaps the restoration of the commanded life is the path of a higher freedom. And perhaps there is no better roadmap for renewal than our own biblical inheritance, which holds justice and mercy in balance, and which elevates the dignity of man as created in God's image, while remaining realistic about the lesser angels of our nature. So what is our purpose as Jews and as conservatives? We would not be conservatives if we believed that ideas alone could resolve the enduring problems of human life, or that we can easily will a new Jewish age into existence. And we would not be Jews if we expected life to be easy. The things we seek to preserve and to restore and to create will take time. Success will require sustaining hope in the face of frequent setbacks and great obstacles. But we can envision a strong Jewish future, and we believe that Jewish and conservative ideas can help secure it. In America, we can envision an era where the ideal of religious freedom is preserved and restored, and religious communities, Jewish and Christian alike, grow and flourish as young people seeking meaning and direction in their lives return to the faith of their ancestors. We can envision a new birth of educational freedom, one that fuels a remarkable era of Jewish entrepreneurship, Hebrew immersion schools, Jewish classical academies, yeshivas that instill rabbinic habits of mind and heart while also enlarging the civilizational imagination of young Jews as future lights unto the nations. In Israel, we can imagine a new age of economic freedom, and with it a growth economy that sustains the political viability and military strength of the Jewish state. We can envision a new Israeli conservatism, which brings together the variety of Israelis, religious, traditional, and secular alike, who believe in Jewish exceptionalism. We can envision the continued emergence of Israel as a regional power in the Middle East, respected by its friends and enemies alike, and able to work with those nations that seek stability and self-preservation more than physical and ideological conquest. We can envision a counter-reaction to the new anti-Semitism that is now poisoning so much of modern Europe, and a recovery of the Judeo-Christian ethos that gave birth to the West at its best. Most conference gatherings of this kind throughout history are little noted nor long remembered. And we should never succumb to the hubris of the revolutionary, who almost always does more damage than good. But occasionally, a small group of people come together to inaugurate a reformation, or to launch a movement, or to forge a new way forward into the future. I believe that is why we are here today. Without a conservative political vision, the Jews face grave perils. And without a Hebraic moral awakening, the modern West is in grave danger. Those of us in attendance at this conference, including the remarkable roster of thinkers and leaders who will speak throughout the day, understand this challenge. The question is, do we have the moral self-confidence and the political wisdom to advance a better set of ideas? And do we have the energy to build the civic and political institutions that can sustain America, Israel, and the Jews into the unknowable future? I believe that we do, and I hope that this assembly of kindred spirits is just the beginning. Thank you.